brand new patch notes slash reaction. This is the brand new 2.0. This is going to be also in Season 6 slash Vessel of Hatred, but this is also the PTR. So the PTR doesn't have everything from Season 6. We also have some sort of like mechanic that's not revealed yet, but the most important thing, when is it happening? September 4th is when the PTR will be going live. Let's go and check out all of the new adjustments, and hopefully we'll see some new items and stuff to go ahead and have some fun with. So we're getting some stat changes. So the most important thing, by the way, guys, is that level 60 is now the maximum level in the game. That's going to be in the new season. All right, so that's one of the most big changes. And how it works, your Paragon points are going to be shared across all your characters, which is really cool. And then we're getting these new difficulties. There's Normal, Hard, Expert, Penitent. And then there's Torment 1 through 4. And then upon reaching level 60, it unlocks it. I'm just going to go over the things that actually matter. So on Torment 4, you get minus 1,000 armor and 100% negative resistances. So you're going to have to stack up armor a little bit more. And then we have the Paragon update where you're only allowed to have, I believe it's supposed to be, 5 Paragon boards is now the new limit. So it's 6 Paragon glyphs basically because you have your starter board and then you get 5 additional ones. And then they're changing the pit, how it's going to be working. It goes up to 100, I believe now is like the max one. And then the Paragon boards, we're getting apparently new Paragon boards, and you can only get 5 Paragon boards. That's another big change coming into this. They're also reworking the items, and all ancestral items will have 1 greater affix, which will be really cool. So everything's going to be at least 1 GA, which is very, very good. And then they're changing the item power. It says ancestral items always drop at item power 800, the highest possible. So 800 is the new maximum item power, but they said that like there are some things that can break this rule. So I'm not sure if the mythic uniques have more or what exactly. And we're getting a new skill for every single class. So the Barbarian gets a new weapon throw, and I guess they're showing off the little ability here. And then you have like 2 different variants of it. I might cover more of these when we can actually see it. I mean, I know they kind of show it here, but sometimes visually, like seeing the little like different branches here. So you can gain increased attack speed while it's thrown, or you can make it so swapping weapons near any of your thrown weapons creates more pulses. So it throws down and then it creates these pulses. And then we have the Mighty Throw, does 200x damage and stuns enemies, so to make it more of a build. This is also, by the way, a weapon mastery, so probably like the 3rd sword. Then we've got Druid, so it's a stone burst. So this is a skill that you hold up and then it pops for some sort of amount of damage, up to 400% increase. So you can either make it so the final explosion is going to increase the damage. You can also gain extra attack speed, or it costs more spirit and it does 50x more damage. And here's what it looks like. So you just charge up. You can release it earlier, and that's how this works. And then Necromancer is getting a giant like AoE skill, and I believe this one's an ultimate. So it's just basically like Righteous Fire. If you've played that, just sucks the souls out of everyone. So it corrupts them. It does a certain amount of damage every 0.25 seconds. And then there's the upgrades on this. You're going to get both of them anyways. So every soul is going to increase your damage, and then enemies with your souls ripped out become vulnerable. So it's going to apply vulnerability and get more damage. Because the reason why it's I'm just saying that you're going to get all of them is because it's an ultimate. There's no branches with the ultimates. And then Rogue has this other cool skill. This is the brand new Rogue skill where you're going to be literally a whirlwind, but it does have a charge. You can't just hold it down, but there are ways to kind of help out with the charges of it. So you gain extra movement speed. I don't know if this can break the cap of 200, but if it does, maybe we can mess around with it. So it's going to throw a bunch of knives at enemies, and it has charges. And then when you stop channeling, you're going to be dropping stun grenades, and then Dance of Knives slows enemies hit by 25. And I'm not sure if it's a new cutthroat agility skill. Okay. And then the Sorcerer over here has a new skill that are going to summon these little like conjurations here, and depending on what you use, it might be a fire, a lightning, or a cold one. And the fire one burns, the cold one chills, lightning one, I'm not sure if it actually stuns, but let's see if it says over here. But so they're gonna last for 8 seconds, then they're gonna deal some sort of damage here. If it works with a fractured winter glass, this might be a pretty cool thing to play. If it counts as like another conjuration, I mean, this could be really big. There's a familiar again. So the fire does burn, the cold chills, and the lightning stuns. Okay, so it does stun. Okay, and then with summon familiar, you can you have 2 or more different elements. You gain damage reduction, and then this And then the invoked one makes so while familiar is active, you gain 10x increased damage to the skills to its type. So you get some extra damage. There's 5 new passes for each class, which is pretty cool. I mean, this is going to be a massive thing, man. The Barbarian has, these are all passive, by the way, so it's on the skill tree. So damaging an enemy with basic skill increases your damage. And then Heavy Hitter, your ultimates deal more damage. Warpath, after overpowering, you get to deal increased damage. And then Irrepressible is casting a weapon mastery skill, fortifies you for 10% of your maximum life, which could be pretty good with the third sword. And then the Barbed Carapace, for every 25 Fury you spend. This is a key passive, so this is like one of the big ones at the very end. You gain extra thorns up to 120%, and then casting a skill with a cooldown grants you Unhindered, which ignores unit collision. If you play Diablo 3, it's like the illusory boots. And then you get to deal 100% of your damage, your thorns as physical damage to enemies every second. And then with the Druid, you have Humanity. Oh, by the way, important thing. Every class gets 10 additional points, which is pretty big. Then with Humanity, you get up to 15x more damage while in human form, which is kind of cool because human was really lacking. But I still think human's one of the best builds for, like, you know, beginners. It's still really good. It's just a lot less that you have to maintain with that. Then you have Catastrophe, which does more damage after casting an ultimate. Then you have Aptitude, which gives you X increased damage while healthy and X increased damage while above a certain amount of movement speed. These bonuses can stack, okay? And then we have Backlash. You get increased damage for 5 seconds after casting a defensive skill. And then one with Nature, which is the new key passive. Our companions gain 1 additional companion and deal 50x. So this plus Stampede equals money. So this would be pretty cool. And you gain the passive effect of Ravens, Wolves, and Poison Creeper. And then with Necromancer, we have Lucky Hit. We have a chance to grant yourself some Barrier. We have Finality, which gets increased damage after casting an ultimate. Then we have While Fortify, you get more increased damage to elites. Then we have Precision Decay. Lucky Hit chance is going to be increased. And then a new key passives. Enemies affected by vulnerable, crowd control, or shadow damage over time are infected with a affliction that takes 15x increased damage from you and your minions. Your curse skills deal 80% of the weapon damage as shadow damage to enemies that have affliction, and it gets increased by 30x if your damage to crowd control, vulnerable, and shadow damage for time combined. So maybe you can start scaling this. I don't think that there is a cap for that. And then with Rogue, we have Target Practice, your crit strikes with Marksman and Cutthroat. I don't know why they didn't say, like, cut your crit strike chance, because maybe, I don't know, if this means you can't crit with, like, the Doombringer and, like, Azarath. But, like, I think they should have just said your crit strike is increased, would have been better. But anyways, you get 9 extra crit if you want that. And then we have increased damage after you use Evade, and then Evasive after dodging an attack, you gain extra damage reduction, and that could be kind of nice. Then you have Unto Dawn, so your ultimate skills deal up to 45x increased damage. And then we have Alchemic Admixture, which is the key passive, dealing 3 different types of non-physical damage, increases the potency of your imbuement skills by 40% for 5 seconds. This potency is further increased by 20% of the total amount of your bonus damage to Poison, Shadow, and Cold. Non-physical, by the way, counts Poison, Shadow, and Cold, so that means if you get the Rakanot's boosts, these could be actually pretty dang good. However, I'm wondering if this will work with, like, extra procs. So what I mean, off of, like, let's say Cold Clip, or if you can get this off of Rakanot's will give you fire damage instantly. Rakanot's will give you fire. It's 3 different types. So yeah, you get fire with that. You can get Cold Clip. I mean, you can deal cold pretty easy with Rogue because you just run any of the imbuements too. So you can cover fire, cold pretty easy, and then the third one, you know, you would have to actually apply an imbuement. You can also technically do shadow damage with Doombringer, so you can get maybe Doombringer if you want to run it, and I think that could be pretty good just to activate it. It is 40%, and then if there's no cap on this, we'll see how high this can go, but I don't know how high you're going to be able to go with this, because all I can think of that would give you like a crazy boost is Rakanot's, which is like if you get that greater affix, that could go pretty hard. And then with Sorc, we have cooldown reduction. We also have you generate some barrier of your maximum life every second, and it's lost for 5 seconds after losing health. So as long as you don't take damage, it's like, what's that, Galvanizing Ward in D3, right? Then you have Dampen Layer, so you get damage reduction while you have a barrier. And then we have your Frost, Shock, Pyromancy damage is increased for each skill you have equipped of that type. So that's kind of actually letting you try to build a character that is more like singular focus, which I think is kind of cool. So that's going to be cool as well. And then Enlightenment key passive over here. So you have casting any skill grants 1 stack of Enlightenment, or grants 15 if your previous cast skill was a different element. So it's really wanting you to ramp up after getting 100 stacks. Well, like compared to 1 to 15 is massive though. So like they really want you to mix it. But you become enlightened. You can no longer gain stats and lose 10 stacks per second. Then 1 lighten, your bonus damage with fire, lightning, and cold or equal to them combined, and you gain 25% X increased damage, mana regen, and attack speed. This is going to be actually pretty dang nice. I think a lot of the Sorc builds will actually be interested in running this, specifically the cold ones, because with like lightning and fire actually have better ones, but like the cold one, Avalanche is kind of weak, I would say. So it's nice to have that, because the other one requires a freeze, which means no good against bosses. All right, so as far as Runeword goes, this is how it works. You get a activator rune that requires some sort of condition. It's basically like the same design as David Kim back in 2020. If you guys remember me covering this like way long ago, it's the exact same system. So how a rune word works, there's only 2 like runes that you have to combine. So I'm going to call this one the male rune. I'm going to call this one the female rune. So it makes sense because that's how they combine. You have to connect them in order for it to work. They go in sockets that use 2. So hopefully this kind of makes sense. So this one goes into this one. So this one says, in order to get the bonus, you're going to need to travel 5 meters. Now, after you travel 5 meters, you now reach the condition that you're going to gain what they call it's another like, it's not like mana, they call it something else, and I'll kind of explain it as we go along. But then we have Jaw over here, so it says replace your next evade with the Sorceress Teleport, blinking further, dealing damage, and becoming unstoppable. So if I travel 5 meters, I then can activate this, my evade becomes this. So that's kind of how it works. I don't know if they're going to go more in depth. Okay, so here we go. Here's what I was talking about. So you don't have mana with these. They're called offerings. I wish they called it like, they should just call it rune mana, because it would make way more sense, because now we have offerings. So this one over here, it gains 50 offerings after I travel 5 meters. If I do what's called an overflow, and I have more than what's required, so this one requires 500 offerings. So this is the male one, which requires us to gain 50 offering, and then we have the female rune. Again, this is like the easiest way, because you can't use 2 male runes won't work, okay? Nor will 2 female runes. I'm just mentioning that because it's like the easiest thing I can think of. This one requires 500 offering, and it's got a 2-second cooldown. It says replace your next evade with the Sorcerer's Teleport. But this requires 500. So that means I would need to activate this 10 times in order to use Jaw. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. So there's a bunch. Oh, they show off all of them. Okay, this is what I think matters the most. So, Yule Legendary, so you gain 50 offering, and then you get to cast a skill with a cooldown. So Seer is you gain 25 offering, and it casts the same non-channeled skill 3 times in a row. And then with the Ahu, you gain 10 offering, that lucky hit up to 100% chance against injured enemies. Oh, that's terrible. Like, if this was healthy, it'd be much better. Next up, Neo. So it's 300. It says deal damage after not taking any within 5 seconds. Resets if invulnerable. What? Deal damage after not taking any? Huh, I don't know, it's maybe a number. And then with Tam, we have gain 25 offerings. Let's cast a non-channeled core skill. With Zol, we have gain 150, and it says evoke a power from another class. Ooh, what are the limits between this? Now, they did show off the top of my head, they have Berserking as one of them. You also have Petrify. So you can get ultimates from another class, which is really awesome. Then we have Zan, which is to gain 150 offering when you cast a ultimate skill. And then with Theo, we have gain 1,000 offering and becomes injured or crowd controlled. Oh, this has an internal cooldown. That means basically no one's going to run it. It's just how the reality is. Then we have Knocked. You gain 5 offering. You get to inflict a crowd control that isn't a slow or chill. Wow, this is going to be godly with Fist of Fate. That is going to be super good. Now, I'm wondering if that's inflicting one without it actually registering, because the bosses are basically unaffected by crowd control, but you can still apply a crowd control to them, but it builds up the stagger. So that's going to be really good with Fist of Fate, potentially. And then we have Sem, so you gain 50 offering and you just activate evade. With Bach, you gain 50 and you just travel. With it's 10 and your minion or companion kills an enemy or dies. Okay. Interesting, you gain offering when the companion dies, because that kind of probably ruins the way it works, because you'd probably be running a minion build, right? And then the axe is to gain 100 when you drink a healing potion. With Pock, you gain 2 offering, you spend 5% of your maximum resource. This could be probably the easiest one to actually activate, considering there's things like Crown of Lucian that maybe can be actually finally a little bit more viable now. We have Modi, we gain 10, and that's after casting a skill or after moving. So this is going to be really good for stutter stepping. This is probably going to be one of the top tier ones for Rogue. Now this has a 0.2 second cooldown, but that's like very, very fast. So with Ka, we have gain 2, and that's when you lose % of your life. I don't know if there's any like using your life. I think, what is it? Dancing Death is one of them, right? Where you like sacrifice your life. It could be something to consider. Then we have Lith, which is you gain 25, and that's when you stand still for 3 seconds. So it's probably better for channeled skills, but again, channeled skills aren't really seen to play. Then these are the invocation runes. So these are all the ones that are going to gain the offering, and then you're going to spend it. All right. So now we are looking at Lack. So this is the one where it requires 800. So overflow, increased duration, cooldown 1 second. You get to evoke the Barbarian's challenging shout, reducing your damage taken. Okay, so that's kind of cool. And then this one's 500, and this is the War Cry, increasing your movement speed. Then we have Vex, it's 400, and it gains +3 skills for 5 seconds. It's very low, but the cooldown isn't really that difficult. As long as you can upkeep this, I think this one has some potential for a lot of builds. Then with Garb, we have 25 offering. Overflow, you gain multiple stacks. That's what I was talking about. If you gain more than what's required, you're going to get multiple. So you get to have 2.5 crit strike chance for 5 seconds, up to 25. Okay, so you get up to 25 extra crit. And then we have 700 offering. Your next skill will be guaranteed crit and overpower. So that could be used with Banished Lord's Talisman. Because like the thing with Banished Lords, it's got to do the crit. So maybe you can combine it with that and do some other fun stuff. And with 800, overflow is increased duration, so you get Earthen Bulwark. 500 off this one lets you have the Druid's Petrify. And Yom is 100 offering, and it's going to change the cooldown. It's just reduce your active cooldowns. Ooh, this one has a lot of potential as well. This is probably one of the top tier ones. It's 100 offering, and the overflow is reducing it. It's further reducing the cooldowns. Okay. So I think this one's going to be one of the top tier ones for a lot of builds. And then we have Loom, which is offering overflow, increased resource restored. Cooldown is 1 second, and to restore primary resource. And then Kua is requirements of 400 offering, and then restore and evade, charge, and gain increased movement speed. And then with Zal, we have 200 offering, and that's going to gain 20% maximum life. And then with What, it is 100 offering. With a 1 second cooldown, evoke Necromancer's Horde, Decrepify, slowing enemies and reducing their damage. And you can execute them, but I don't really feel like execute's very good unless it worked on bosses, which is like Calling Strike. Then we have Teb, so it requires 100, and then it invoke the Necromancer's Abhorrent Iron Maiden, counterattacks, and then it also heals you. 400 for this one. Your next non-basic skill spends all of your primary resource to deal up to 100% increased damage. Now, I wonder what happens when you run this on Beastfall Boots, because that already spends it. Will that work? I don't know. If it does double up on that, that could be kind of cool. And the next one is 200 offering, and then it reduces your active ultimate by 4 seconds. This could be actually pretty good for, let's say, the Druid. That really helps out. And then with 700 offering on this rune, it says invokes the rules countering concealment, gaining dodge chance, movement speed, unstoppable, and stealth. This could be maybe interesting if you can throw it also on the Druid with like the 100% crit when you enter stealth. So that'd be kind of cool as well. And then Mott is going to require 150, and its cooldown's 1 second. Gain a shadow from the Dark Shroud, reducing damage per taken. And then with Jaw, our next evade has the teleport. And then with Thol, it's 400. Invoke the Sorcerer's Nova. And then with Zik, we have invoke the spirit. Oh wait, so we are getting a Spiritborn skill, even though I don't think we can play the Spiritborn when the PTR comes out. We're gonna be able to like kind of play it, right, with getting some of the skills from it. So that's cool. And then with Cry, we have 3-second cooldown. Invoke the Spiritborn's Vortex, dealing damage, and it pulls in enemies. With Ono, we have 25 cost. Invoke the Druid's Dancing Bolts, which deals damage to enemies. With Tech, we have the ability to do the Barbarian's Earthquake, and it deals damage. Now, I don't know how these scale, because if these don't scale, I mean, it might not be really that good at all, because obviously we're not going to be able to play, like, the Barbarian Glyphs, right, if we're not playing Barb. We have 100 on this one, which leaves behind the Necromancer's Desecrated Ground. With Tune, we have increased grenades spawn. Invoke the Rogue's Stun Grenades. With Ton, we have 25 increased meteorite spawn. Invoke the Sorcerer's Meteorites. Now, this could actually be pretty good for the meteor build. I'm assuming if you're playing the Sorc and you get the meteor and it works with, like, you know, Starfall, it works with all the aspects and all the tempering, I think this one has some potential. Meteor Sorc hasn't been really hot recently, but maybe something fun to mess around with. Then we have 100 with this one, which is going to do the Pestilent Swarm, which I believe, I'm guessing this poisons also, which could actually be kind of used in the most recent build that we have with a Shout Druid, which basically relies on shouts, but it requires you to poison. So this could be an automation of poison, which I like. Then with Se, we have, we get to summon wolves to attack enemies for 8 seconds. All right. Keep these in mind about runes. They are tradable. Yeah. So the runes, by the way, guys, they are tradable. They can be stacked, and there's only your only maximum of 2 rune words can be equipped. So there's 4 runes in total. So that's going to be in your 2-hander, your chest piece. I think most people will probably want to put it in their 2-hander weapon, which makes Barb actually superior, because you would normally want to put... these will replace your gems, by the way. But on the PTR, it looks like this is like a little picture, and you can see it just gives you some random gems. So on the PTR, I'm assuming we can just craft them all, but it looks like it's going to cost 400 gold, and how it works is you get 3 runes, and then you get a random rune. You trade 3 random runes for... You trade 3 runes for a random rune. That's how it works. And then you just RNG your way to getting them. But since you can trade them, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. And then from PTR, there's going to be... so how do you get these runes? So runes of any rarity can be acquired from a monster drop. So any of the monsters will just drop them. Okay. And then there's also going to be caches that contain it for PTR. Okay. And then the runes won't be available until September 6th. So there's 2 dates here that are important. The 4th is when the new update comes out for the PTR, and then the 6th has the runes. Otherwise, we don't have those. And then there's also the new party finder. So I'm just going to do it like in game, but it's cool that there's a new way to have the ability to find. And they're just talking about how to set up the PTR, and then these are just the game notes over here. How long are these game notes? Because I almost feel like this could be a separate video. Oh, these are just the new mythics and then the new aspects, right? I'm gonna like try not to make this video way too long. All right, I think we're gonna go ahead and cut it for this part, because this could be like another half hour, and I want to try to segment these videos and go over like the more important things for like the sake of, if people just want to learn about the runes, we have that. But there's going to be a little bit more. But again, the important thing is if you want to connect to the PTR, which is not available right now, I'm just showing you guys how this works. So you go game version and do a PTR and you install it. That's how you play the PTR. It's not available right now, but on the 4th, that's all you need to do as far as how to install it. But I'm going to be covering the rest of the stuff in a separate video, because those are going to be like the class balance changes, and I'm going to reserve that for a separate video. But anyways, let me know, guys, what you think of the patch notes and the Runewords, most importantly, as that's like the main focus of the video here in checking out what we can do. So as far as I can tell, though, it's definitely like a cooler system, but I wanted like... They said we get to make our own skills, and in a sense you can. It's like kind of a condition, and then there's an activation. You're not able to select it from all of the skills. I was hoping that we could just select Rogue, select all the skills, and then just have this whatever condition. But still, step in the right direction. It's going to get probably more complex as we go along, and they're probably going to be adding more. But what do you think of the runes and the systems?